Is Donald Trump a Kremlin agent or not? It turned out that this version was seriously investigated by the United States intelligence agencies. The White House recently declassified and published internal documents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which prove the Bureau officially, at the level of a full counterintelligence investigation, investigated whether Donald Trump was an agent recruited by Russia. The investigation was codenamed Oxford Coma and was opened in May 2017. Exactly 1 week after Donald Trump fired then FBI Director James Comey without explanation. The very existence of such an investigation is no longer a rumor or insinuation, but a documented fact recorded in official internal FBI documents. And this immediately gave everyone fresh ammunition. Those conspiracy theorists who have long claimed that Donald Trump was definitely recruited in Russia and that all this time he was working for the Kremlin. But don't jump to conclusions, because the way Donald Trump's administration presents this publication of FBI documents and what is actually written in these very documents are two different stories, and it's worth examining them separately. Because there is a clear feeling, a sense, that the White House still wants to leave certain gaps in this story. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's dig into this dark topic together. But before we start, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. We are getting close to 300,000 subscribers, so I'd appreciate every subscription. So, according to declassified memos, the FBI conducted an official investigation into the question of whether the US President Donald Trump acted as a Russian agent and whether Moscow could have recruited him. Let's start with the documents themselves, which were published the day before. The key file, the so-called opening electronic communication, is dated May 16, 2017. Exactly 1 week after the dismissal of Comey on May 9, with this document, the FBI officially opened a full investigation into the sitting President of the United States, Donald Trump. The wording from the memorandum itself goes like this, quote, "The FBI is opening a full investigation based on established factual circumstances, which reasonably indicate that President Donald J. Trump may be or may have been, knowingly or unknowingly, involved in activities in the interests of or on behalf of the government of the Russian Federation, which may constitute a violation of federal criminal law or a threat to the national security of the United States of America." And further in the document, the justification for the decision to initiate this investigation is stated. Another quote, "Based on the facts and circumstances provided at this time, the FBI believes that opening this investigation is the least intrusive method to eliminate the serious national security risk arising from the alleged activity." That is, FBI agents were considering a specific scenario, the firing of FBI Director James Comey, who at that time was leading the investigation into the Trump campaign's ties with Russia in and of itself. It could have been an action taken in the interests of Moscow, regardless of whether Donald Trump himself understood this or acted blindly, being, according to the wording of the FBI document itself, unknowingly involved in serving the interests of Russia. The context in which this investigation existed is also important. It was a branch of the larger case called Crossfire Hurricane. The very same politically explosive investigation into the alleged collusion between Trump's campaign and the Kremlin in 2016. In the end, the case, let me emphasize, called Oxford, was closed in April 2019, shortly after Special Counsel Robert Mueller completed his investigation. Mueller's investigation itself led to several criminal cases against people from Donald Trump's inner circle. But his final report did not establish collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. At the same time, the report did not directly clear the president of suspicion of obstruction of justice, but it also did not bring charges. In general, the story remained unfinished. And now, here's how Donald Trump's administration itself presents the publication of these FBI files. And here it's important to clearly understand the motives and the timing of the publication, because this doesn't happen just by chance. An official representative of the Trump administration answering the question of why these FBI documents, previously marked as sensitive investigative material, are being declassified right now, stated, President Trump instructed a special White House government transparency task force to uncover previously undisclosed evidence of what the administration calls the weaponization of government agencies against himself, that is, against Donald Trump. According to a White House spokesperson, as the task force finds and declassifies such materials, it makes the information public and sends it to Congress. A statement from the White House itself, published on the official website, presents the whole story in reverse. Not as proof that Trump was reasonably under suspicion, but as proof that the FBI deliberately targeted him personally, despite their own evidence to the contrary. And here's an interesting story. Let's break it down now. Supposedly, even within the Bureau, they already understood that there was no direct evidence that Trump was working for Russia, but they still continued various investigations and even opened new ones. On the White House website, it says, and I'll read the quote, "The Federal Bureau of Investigation opened a criminal investigation specifically targeting Donald Trump in May 2017. Claiming that the newly elected president could have acted as a Russian agent when he fired then-director James Comey. Even though the Bureau's own evidence at that time clearly showed there was no collusion with the Kremlin." And it goes on to clarify, the investigation was based on a claim that, according to previously published materials, most of the FBI's own agents had already rejected. And to support this thesis, the White House and media sympathetic to Donald Trump present specific correspondence within the FBI itself. Here, they show one particular case and say, listen, there was correspondence between two agents, and it clearly demonstrates that supposedly, within the FBI, they understood that the case was baseless. It would lead to nothing, and yet they still opened it and started the investigation. So, the deputy director of the Bureau, Peter Strzok, in an email to his colleague Lisa Page on May 19, 2017, that is, literally 3 days after the Oxford Coma case was opened, wrote that his gut feeling tells him that there is nothing serious there. It is also noted that by the time this investigation was opened, FBI agents had already debunked the so-called Steele dossier. This is a document with claims about Trump's ties to Russia, compiled by a former British intelligence officer, and they had already cleared Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, of collusion suspicions. It is also specifically noted that the Bureau had been warned. The person involved in the case, Carter Page, was actually a CIA informant, not some kind of Russian stooge as it was originally presented. Well, in short, that's it. All the arguments point to the fact that they didn't figure it out. In reality, the FBI was dealing with an exposed CIA agent, but they thought he was a Russian agent. And basically, they didn't figure it out and opened a case. There is also an interesting technical detail that has already become the subject of separate discussions. The name of the investigation, as I mentioned a little earlier, is Oxford Coma, and as you can see, it contains an obvious spelling mistake in the word Oxford. That is, instead of ow, it's written as Oxford, Oxford, and not Oxford, Oxford. The reason for such a typo is unclear, but some commentators suggest that the FBI deliberately uses this kind of distorted spelling, replacing letters with numbers in the code names of documents specifically to make it more difficult to search for documents later through official information disclosure requests. Well, for example, someone might say, "Give us the Oxford Comma documents." They start searching, well, searching figuratively speaking, yes, meaning in internal databases they type in Oxford Committee, and there is no Oxford Committee. There's the Oxford comma, and supposedly no one would think to use that exact configuration. The further institutional fate of this story is also very telling, because it didn't end there either. After the completion of Mueller's investigation, then Attorney General William Barr instructed John Durham to conduct a separate review of how exactly the FBI initiated the Russia investigation as a whole. And this is Durham in 2023. He concluded that the Bureau did not have sufficient factual grounds to open a full investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, and that the Bureau deviated from its own usual standards, showing bias against President Trump. But, and here it's important to remember, William Barr was actually appointed Attorney General by Donald Trump himself, so he could have been biased as well, but in the opposite direction. To be continued. Now let's discuss how this publication of FBI materials fits into the much longer and still unresolved story of the confrontation between Donald Trump and James Comey. Because this conflict has been going on for almost 10 years and continues to escalate to this day, but they just can't directly accuse each other of anything specific or, take each other to court. The Department of Justice under Donald Trump in April of this year once again brought criminal charges against James Comey in connection with a social media post, which was made in 2025, in which the former FBI director posted a photo of seashells arranged in the shape of the numbers 86 and 47. Some Republicans, especially from the MAGA movement, at that time interpreted this post as a hidden threat of physical harm against Donald Trump. They said that the number 47 is read as the president's number, and 86 in slang means to eliminate. Well, accordingly, the charges against Comey for threatening the president and for transmitting threats through interstate communications were brought 5 months after that, after a judge closed an earlier Department of Justice case against Comey on charges of lying to Congress and obstructing the investigation into Russian interference. Well, and here you can clearly see Donald Trump's personal desire to somehow punish James Comey, but it's not entirely clear what exactly he's trying to punish him for or what methods he's using. In general, this whole story with the publication of the picture with 4786 on it is still ongoing. And, as you can see, it was called not just threats to the president, but also, let me quote this wording once again, a threat to the president and transmitting the threat through interstate communication channels. So it turns out that social networks are considered interstate communication channels. Well, let's put it this way. If Comey is so dangerous, then why can't the court manage to convict him? This story has been going on for almost 10 years, and that's why conspiracy theorists are starting to have questions again. Did the FBI really reveal everything to us in these new documents? Continuation. What can be said about all of this as objectively as possible? The confirmed and documented fact is as follows. In May 2017, the FBI opened an official counterintelligence investigation into the sitting President of the United States regarding his possible, including unintentional, work in the interests of the Russian government. This is established by the declassified FBI document itself. This is not a rumor, not journalists, not, as Trump says, fake news. This is a specific document. It is also a confirmed fact that the investigation was closed without any charges being filed, and the parallel and larger Mueller investigation did not establish collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. But that didn't fully settle the matter either. And here is where two competing interpretations of the same set of facts begin, and both are actively promoted in public discourse. As you can imagine, any information, any set of information can be presented in different ways. And in this case, we have two interpretations. The first one, which is put forward by the Trump administration itself, sounds like this. The very fact of opening an investigation, despite the fact that some Bureau agents already doubted how serious the theory was at that time, proves that the FBI deliberately and unfairly targeted President-elect Trump. That is, this publication does not confirm suspicions about Trump's ties with Russia, but on the contrary, undermines trust in the investigation itself, in the FBI itself. But in fact, this version is based on the correspondence of one FBI agent with another agent who writes that his gut feeling tells him this is not a serious case. Well, a gut feeling is hardly a solid argument. The second interpretation, which follows from the whole story of the Crossfire Hurricane case as a whole, goes like this. The official opening of the Bureau's full-fledged investigation, a legally justified investigation specifically into the question of whether the president might be working for a foreign state, is in itself quite an extraordinary event in the history of American intelligence agencies. Regardless of its subsequent outcome, and it reflects the level of seriousness of the concerns that existed in the intelligence community at that time, regardless of whether those concerns were later confirmed or not. The very fact of suspicion already deserves attention. After all, suspicions don't arise out of nowhere. Friends, which interpretation do you support? Please write your answer in the comments below this video. I'll leave it at that for now. Share your thoughts and conclusions in the comments below the video. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like the video. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation or through a channel membership right here on YouTube. Find all links and details in the video description, or click the join button below. And make sure to click the subscribe button. If you watch my videos and still haven't subscribed, it's really important to me. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Bye everyone.